children were being ferried backwards and forwards by somebody who drove them backwards and forwards. And I was at meetings or chasing out workers or sewing up garments or and generally just running a business. So my marriage wasn't as good as it might be for all that. We'd grown apart at that stage, and I was sitting like this on a dining room table one day going, this ain't right. There was the recession again, my first recession that hit me, one of them, my third one now. And that recession, and people started lying to me who owed me money, whom I began. We were talking earlier about business, all our businesses, and I luckily again am blessed that it's always been that way. It's all based on relationships. So everything you do is based on return on relationships. It's all people buy from people. You can have identical products, even identical prices, or a more expensive product, and people won't buy the cheaper one because they prefer the person. People will buy from people, and that is, if you hear me say nothing else, and the other thing is drink water every day. So if you hear me say nothing else, those are two of the most important things I have to tell you or share with you. So people buying from people, and I made friends with all these people that I sold the knitwear to and then sold chokers to, and they stitched me up, they stuffed me, and they gave me checks with the wrong dates on them or unsigned or this, that and the other. And I became really disillusioned with life in the universe. I was 30-something and I thought, that's not right. I'm not liking this. And I was really emotionally cut up about it. And also about not my children growing up and me. As a dyslexic, when I left school, my headmistress said, don't worry, dear, as I got English language that I had to sit 7 times for, Spanish because it was my first language, sewing because my mother taught me, and religious knowledge because I fancied a vicar, and that was it. So that was my only claim to stuff. And my headmistress tapped me on the arse as I left school and said, don't worry, dear, you've got good childbearing hips. So I thought to myself, right, I got good childbearing hips, and I born these wonderful, wonderful, wonderful 3 kids, and I'm not seeing any of them. This is crackers, and my whole thing was just, I had one of those aha moments that life wasn't meant to be the way I was driving it. And I decided to come and live, or to go and live in North Wales. Can you imagine what everybody would be? What? Do you want to live where? They speak Welsh, and it rains all the time, everybody kept saying to me. I was going, well, I then got a map, and again, my dyslexia thing, England being, or the UK, whatever, being that length, the top bit had lots of crunchy brown lines and blue lines running through. Then there was another mass there, and then there was some in mid-Wales. And I thought, well, my husband, to get with kids backwards and forwards there, but I really would like to live in North Wales, and the top bit, Scotland, is too far. So I thought, well, I can't do that. So, a long story, I'm writing a book because there's too much to spiel out here. So I chose, after 3 years of faffing and getting all sorts of emotions muddled and falling in love with the wrong people and all that palaver, I then got myself, as a single mother with 3 kids, to come and live in North Wales. And a lovely part of that story was I rented a barn out of the Sunday Times. Just picked a barn in the middle of, just picked a barn, had nothing to do with anything. And from that position, I rented it, and then with the children drove in this Mini. I should tell you a silly story there. I always wanted a scimitar. You probably don't remember any of you what a scimitar is. You do, right? And I fancied earning myself a scimitar, and I was like dead excited. And this accountant guy, I said to him, when I can buy one, will you let me know? So he said, yeah, go on then. And years went by, or a year or 2 went by, and he went one day to me and said, right, you've made it, girl, you can buy yourself a scimitar. So I went in, and I got this scimitar, and I thought, yes, I've made it. And I sat in the thing, scared the living bleeding daylights out of myself in this thing. And I went, no, I'll just have a Mini with all the bells and whistles on it. So I got a Mini with everything that a Mini could have on it. So anyhow, so then when I came to Wales, a successful person, but I had liquidated the knitwear business. And also another thing which I think is that I'm very proud of is that I've stayed friends with my husband for 33 years after we got divorced. So much so that he spent every Christmas with me and my partner, and we also went on holiday. He got married twice after that, or 2 other ladies after that, and went on holiday with them, with or without the children, I can't remember, but we did holidays with them. and his ashes are still in my home at the moment, because he always wanted to be buried in the property that I live, by the river, and we're waiting to have a party to scatter his ashes. So I've managed to hold, even as a single parent, I've managed to hold the whole thing together, which I'm very proud of. And my son, youngest son, is now MD of Patchwork. Anyway, I'm getting there. So then, back on the story a bit, rewind. So I get into this Mini and I travel about 2,000 miles around Wales looking for somewhere to nest myself as a single parent with 3 kids. And that was a joke and a bloody half, because everybody went, "You what? You can't live there, it's for my sheep." But and they go, "It's got no water." Oh, please, please. I said, my husband's an architect, because it was easy to say my husband. My husband's an architect and he's going to help me, and we can build the walls and we can make it happen. And of course, there was no estate agents going back 34, 5 years ago, and this, that, and the other. So anyway, after a long, long story, which took at least I think it must have been about 2 years of going back to this rented place, a farmer came to the door one day, and I had just, again, the synchronisticness of all of this is, I love to tell this because it happens to all of us, but few people actually recognize it, and they're really important moments in our lives. And what happened was, I said to the children, that's it, we'd had sandwiches for bloody weeks on end, let's have some soup. And I folded them, I made a ceremony, I made a hoo-ha, I folded the maps up, and I said, right, that's it guys, let's just be home now for 3 days, and then we'll go back home, and then back to Surrey where I was living, and you go back into school, and I'll come on my own and look for where to live, and I'll do it on my own instead of you traipsing 2,000 miles with me. So as I did that, there was a knock on the door, and the farmer who had befriended, we befriended, I was driving tractors and carrying bales, and generally we were all mucking in, acclimatizing ourselves, no television and all of that. And he knocked on the door and he said, "Oh," he said, "the house you want is up the road." And I got him by the neck, because he was the same height as me, and I dragged him to me, and I said, "You bastard." I said, "I've passed the test, haven't I?" And he went, "Yeah, you're all right." Because what happened was, as a single person, and then when I did come to live in North Wales, my son Marcus, who's now 48, was the only child in a divorced parents in 1,000 kids at school. That's how. So for me, it was like I was a woman, a prostitute that had just whatever had come up with 3 kids. So it wasn't a good look then at all. And looking the way I do, it was like, there's something dodgy going on here. What's she doing up here with 3 kids? So anyhow, so what happened was that the house that he was recommending that I go and have a look at was 2 gates up from the bloody house I'd been renting and done 2,000 sodding miles all over to the coast and to everywhere. And Shirley MacLaine wrote a book, You Can Get There From Here, and a lot of us try to get there by going to Tibet, by going to do stuff. And actually, you're here, and you can get there from here. But we've spent, and I'd spent a lot of effort. I mean, I've just told you the story. So anyhow, so I go up to look at this house, and I can't really tell you that story because it's too long, but the long and the short of it was I live there now, and I lived there for 35 years. So that's the house that I started the next part of my life from. I've got time now, I'm going to tell you a nice story here. My stepfather was a banker, and he came back to live in the UK, and I think it was £11,000 from my liquidation, which I'm going back 35 years, was a nice lump sum of money. But the house was more than that, and I needed, I think, another £6,000, and I didn't have it. So I went to my father, and I had a week to make this happen before the auction, and I didn't understand about auctions either. And so I went up to him, and I told him this whole story, and my mother was sewing in the corner, and my father was sitting in a big leather chair. And I poured my heart out to him, and I went, I want to get, and you could see him going, she wants to go and live where and do what? You know, she's got no money, she's got no idea, she had a knitwear business, and now she wants to go live in Wales, and she's got 3 kids, how the hell is she going to make it happen? So I poured my story out, and I thought, after 2 months, I thought, oh shit, I've bloody lost this, because he's not taking it, because he was a very quiet man, and he didn't sort of react. And I remember sitting there going, oh shit, that's it now. And I kind of finished, and he went, well, there you go. And he bent down from the side of his chair and gave me a cheque for the sum of money I needed. Anyway, the end of that story, after the emotions of being accepted and given that money, I went off and was able to buy the house, which I still live in. So that was a nice story. So when I got to North Wales, I thought to myself, right, I ain't going to start another business, because every time I start a business, I make it successful. And the reason I make it successful is that I have to make it successful. And it's not that difficult to make something successful if you have to make it successful. If I'd had that movie upbringing and watching a dark, tall, dark, handsome guy come along, I'd still be on my ass and the size of an effing house, having eaten chocolates all day, every day, and not actually got going. So